What a beautiful portfolio. Let's have a look at mine. Ugh, that sucks. This one? Beautiful. Man, mine's gotta go. Goodbye, old friend. Let's take a look at some inspiration to create something that looks way better. I'm reacting to some of these inspirational portfolios that people have created, trying to get ideas to improve my own, which sucks and I've had to throw it in the bin. But if you don't know who I am, I'm Adrien from Australia. I do videos around design and development, so hit like and let's just jump straight into it. Our first design here is from Adrien, and while I wish it was mine, I've never had the time to invest in such a nice looking portfolio, though I probably should. The very first thing that catches my attention is the text and the plane flying through here. And we can see that this plane continues to animate, which is really cool. We've got a huge statement here, basically introducing the website, saying, I'm a freelance designer, turning your paper ball into paper plane. Now, that's a pretty big statement, but it definitely does seem to take effect because we can see here, this design isn't just a regular design, it does seem to fly through, which is really cool. The other aspect here is his name, which is smaller because he's focusing more on what he's doing rather than who he is. And that's a good way to put your portfolio out there, show rather than tell. He also immediately shows that he's available for freelance work, and if you're going to make a portfolio, you definitely want to put that in because people don't know if you're looking for a job or freelance work or what it is. So immediately you're introduced to who he is, that he's available to work, and what he's doing. If we scroll down here just a little bit more, we do have this UX and UI section here at the top right, as well as a small introduction with a immediate call to action. Now this, is one of the things that I always say is important on a homepage, is the call to action to get people to do something. In this case, we only have the one here, which is immediately to contact him. We do have his social links at the top here, and they've got these nice sort of animations as you hover over them, nice and subtle, and we've got a next section here, which is about and services. So he doesn't even have like a menu from what I can see here, he just immediately has interactions that you should do. When you hover over the action point here to say hello to him, you can click to copy. So this means that you can use your own mail client. This doesn't immediately launch and take you away from the website. It just sort of is a subtle reminder that you're engaging with him, and it copies to your clipboard. So you might be in another application and paste, and suddenly his name is there. So that's great. His introduction here, which is a little bit almost too accessible in terms of its contrast ratio being a little bit low here, says, I help companies design digital products and turn ideas into functional and delightful experiences. So that in itself is a really good statement. It's not too specific because you don't want to say, you code HTML with the latest standards. You want to actually explain how you're doing things and how you're making companies say more money or better outcomes. So this is a good introduction statement. Let's have a look at the next section here, and immediately we're going into the case studies and projects. So this again is showing rather than telling, and if we have a look at this section, we get immediately also examples of his work with pictures as well. We've got this text which almost flows on top of but outside of the box, and we've got a thing here which is a little bit of a circle saying staff pick, which makes it seem like it's on sale or something to take notice of, which is a cool thing that I always see in retail shops, but it's being applied here to a website and it just makes it a little bit more interesting and engaging to focus your attention on this first item. This first item here is a redesign of the e-learning platform that he's done, and you can click into it to view the entire project. So let's actually do that right now. When we go in, we get a nice animation again, and if we scroll through here, we've got an introduction to what's happened, when it happened, the type of work, and a link to the website as well, so we could view that. And here we've got example content, which looks really nice in terms of the testimonial. But he actually goes a step further here and gives information about the project, what happened throughout the project, the principal tasks, the redesign of the product, a nice Gantt chart of how he created the project. This is almost like an entire blog case study just for this one example of work. And if I was looking to hire him, this would give me a lot of reassurance that this person knows what they're doing. Even just examples of the sitemap and how he's linked them together, and then the wireframe process really shows that he knows what he's doing. Then as you keep scrolling through, you finally get the final product. And you can see that they've applied this to their website. So in terms of a case study, this is a perfect example of what you should be doing on your own portfolio if you are trying to show off testimonials. Let's go back to the home page here. You can see those actually animated in really cool. They almost flew into place with some 3D transforms. I assume these sorts of testimonials are happening throughout this entire page, so that's really cool. I'm not going to click through all of them, but let's have a look at the next section here, which is services and contract. So if you're working with a freelancer, you want to know what skill sets they have, and knowing what kind of a contract is in place is also pretty important too. So here again, he's got another call to action at the very bottom of the page, which is exactly the same call to action we had at the top, which is to contact him as being the largest item. So this already is great. And then we've got another section here, which is about and services. Again, that was at the top of the page. And finally, we've got some social links here too that we could check out. If we jump into the about and services details, you get a little bit more about him, a picture of who he is and what he does, and examples of maybe his resume here as well too. So all of this is great in terms of a portfolio, and I would say that this one is probably one of my most favorite portfolios I've ever seen. While it might not have as much animation or 3D elements as other portfolios, it definitely has all the core elements that you need if you want to get hired or earn more money or take on more projects. Our next design here is from Patrick, and he's done a bit of an interesting thing here before his page loads up. Back 10 years ago when we used to be in the web, we used to have these things where we would have landing pages before we go to the website. Patrick's sort of done this with an animation. So here he introduces the page with the minimum is my religion. And this is sort of like a UI UX thing where less is often more. So he's done more essentially design here by providing less on the page. His very introduction section here says, "Hello, I'm Patrick," with a little arrow down here pointing to the fact that he's a developer. He's also a UI UX designer and just freelancing. So that's pretty cool. Then he's got this section here that says 26th of June available for work. So if I was to hire him, I know that he's immediately available today, which is a cool little idea and play on essentially your availability. I assume this changes every single day, as it should, because it shows that you can hire him anytime. But it's a cool little nifty trick to get people to really pay attention and maybe reach out to him immediately. He's got an introduction here that says, "I'm a developer of UI UX design based in Italy." So it gives a bit of background about where he is and what he does. And I can also mouse over here to view some of the examples of work. And that's pretty cool. Immediately I can see what kind of skill set he has, what kind of design he does. And in this case, there's a little pop-up. So it's not like a newsletter pop-up, but it's actually a pop-up to engage with his website. Basically saying, whoa, I've spent more than 3 seconds looking at his portfolio. And this sort of takes me out of the page, but at the same time, it makes me feel like I'm communicating with him because he sort of created a small interaction here. So that's pretty cool and something I haven't seen before either. Let's continue to scroll down to see what else we see. So here we've got selected work. So this is him showing off maybe some of his portfolio. So here we get a little bit more information about Paolo, the portfolio for Paolo, a young Italian musician. So let's actually click on this. And that's a really cool animation into a page. We almost are not clicking and loading new pages, but we're staying on the same page. We have a really cool transition. And here we can see this portfolio. I suppose this is opening up like a big full screen page, but if we click onto it, we can see that it takes me to another page, and we can see here also a case study. Essentially, it's on Behance. I don't often go on that website, but here we're getting examples of what he's designed here. So this looks like a website he's done. It's very minimalist with a lot of blacks and whites. I'd say a bit of color could help, but if this is the brand, then he's done it pretty good. And then we can close out of this and have a look what else he's done. So when we close out of it, we're taken back to the home page. It scrolled us a little bit further down, but that's okay. We've got some more testimonials, assuming they load the same with that full page load. So that's cool. I'm probably not going to click on any more, but I think the animation could be a little bit faster. I feel like I'm almost waiting for those pages to load up. And here he's got what should be called awards, but because it's broken into 2 words, I guess that's meant to be cool and trendy, but I almost read that like ards, or ards. I wish this was a single word, but at least it's a different take on doing the text here, so it made me pay attention a little bit more to read that wording. Here he's been mentioned in the AWWW Awards 8 times for honorable mentions and 7 times for mobile experience. I prefer if he probably showcased those examples. That might have worked a little bit better than just stating them. This is where I'm always saying rather show than tell, and this is an example, for example, of telling, which isn't as effective. If we keep scrolling down here, we've got this text that says, I'm always interested about cool stuff. This, again, feels too generic. If you were writing something specific, like I'm always interested in UI or UX to improve CX, or something more specific to UI, UX, I think that would have worked better than this generic statement. And here we've got an action point saying, if you're interested in a project, let's talk. So that's good. I wish that this let's talk was a little bit more obvious that it's a URL, because from this, if I was just looking at it, I wouldn't even consider to hover over it. And after I do hover over it, I realize it's a link, but it wasn't as transparent. So this portfolio might not do as well as the one previously, but at least it gives you an example of what you can do and what you shouldn't do as well. Our next design here is from Jack. This is his portfolio as a web developer in front-end and WordPress. And immediately we get this nice load-in animation, which I have noticed is a bit of a trend for most people these days, but it's not too out of the box. It's just simply animating the text in. The other thing is we've got a little bit of an animation here on my mouse. So whenever I'm moving that around, it sort of animates as well, but it's only near the top part of the website, which is good because I wouldn't want this animation happening everywhere. He's got a hi, I'm Jack, a web developer, with an expression of what he does, which is front-end development and WordPress, and the call to action here, which is contact me. Contact me takes me to the contact page, which looks like he's in Poland or Germany, somewhere close by, yes, in Poland. And I do like this subtle HTML tagging that's happening throughout the page. It's very low contrast, but it just makes me feel like he's a developer who takes care in his design as well. The contact me, unfortunately, is just a message here. We do get his email here, which is probably what I would be looking for, but it's not as evident. So I would almost put the email address into the contact section just to make that stand out a little bit more. But if we go back to the home page here and we scroll down a little bit, we'll notice that he's got this scroll down thing with an animation. So that's good to see. In case you were thinking this is a landing page, it is using the full height that I currently have. But it takes me straight to his portfolio, and this is a good example of showing rather than telling, where he's got lots of different portfolio examples here. Now, he did say that he is a developer, and a lot of the things I'm seeing here are logos. So it sort of takes me away from the idea of what he's doing. I'd rather see the whole website like he's done here in the app as an example of his portfolio, because the logo, I'm not really sure what I'm clicking into. So I'm just going to click on this first one here, and it does take me to a page here that he's done. It's not that amazing in terms of design, but I suppose he's the one doing the coding. I can't really see much more. I might have to click on these arrows, yes, and I'm getting some more information about the page, but I don't like these arrows because it sort of means I have to scroll through the page, and when I do, then it's actually scrolling the background as well, which is very strange, but it is what it is. In that case, I would almost take you to a separate page if I was going to do a case study like this, because I feel like this pop-up is a little bit dated in terms of how we do, for example, case studies. Case studies really need their own examples. So sort of like that first portfolio we saw, where we saw the case study, a screenshot of a website just doesn't cut it these days if you're trying to show off work you've done. Let's actually jump into the About section here. And here you get myself, myself, and I. I think he's meant to write me, myself, and I here. That's okay. He's got a nice animation here. I think this is a plugin I've seen before. it's at least giving me an idea of some of his skill sets and in an interesting visual way. This one's pretty simple, it's just some text. I wish maybe there were some more pictures here, but I suppose that's enough for about. Let's have a look at my skills. So here in my skills, we've got a little bit more information. So he's done front-end, back-end, React.js, and Angular. In front-end development, he's got award-winning content in marketing agencies, and full stack, he's got creative brand, website design, and other stuff here. Over the years, he's worked in it. The skill sets here in front-end and back-end, this is something that always confuses me. What are these percentages? What are they relative to? Are they absolute based on his skills? Does he think that he's only about 50 to 60% of a back-end developer? Or is that compared to like someone who is very good? He's like mid-tier. It's very confusing. Personally, I would say just list out the skills that you have in backend and maybe some examples of work rather than giving these sort of bar graphs which don't really tell me as much as I might want. We've got the work section, which I assume is like the portfolio section earlier. This one seems a little bit more animated, and it's almost throwing me away from what's happening here because these animations, I don't know what I'm meant to click on. They're flying through a little bit too quickly. This is an example of when animation sometimes is taking a front seat when you should really be focusing on UX and trying to avoid distracting the user with all these moving objects, because now I really don't know what I should click on. He's got a blog here as well. For the blog, it's nice and simple, looks up to date because the last one was about April 23rd. And when I click through to there, it's a nice and simple blog. It's well written, good paragraphs, and it's okay in depth as well. So that's all right. And finally, the contact us page, which we've seen with a contact form, which is useful, but always I prefer to have the email listed and maybe clickable, because that just makes life easier if you're looking to hire people. There's one more serious point that I completely forgot about this website, and it's this button right here at the very top right. This says sound off. And to be honest, this is probably the most important button, because if this was sound on, I would immediately fail this website, because any website that plays sound automatically is terrible. But this being turned off by default is a good idea, and personally I would just remove it entirely, because no website unless it's YouTube should have sound. Our next design here is from Fabian, and this is an example I looked at earlier, and it's an example where sometimes animation is just taken a step too far. Even though it looks subtle, it just takes away from the user experience. Let's jump in and have a look what I mean. So Fabian's got a nice transition effect here, which is nice and subtle for at least loading the page in. It's a fade in, but as soon as I start reading, firstly, this is too much text for any person to really look at and be able to read properly. I would definitely recommend breaking this up into paragraphs. But what's more is that if I hover over things, suddenly we have text changing. It's almost pushing lines away from where they were before. It's making the reading experience very difficult. And while I can maybe look at the keywords that are highlighting, like Fabian from rural Italy does startups with cutting edge, jury member, own startup, wedding photography. Like when I look at the keywords, they don't tell me enough. There's too much clustered together, and the animation is just a little bit too much that I just don't want to read all of this. So in this example, I would definitely see if you can apply less here, like just saying, cheers, I'm Fabian, I do startups from Italy. And then maybe going straight here, I have 9 years experience as a developer with React. Would have been enough for this section, but all this text is just a little bit too much. And that's pretty much it for the homepage here. When I click on the links, they seem to change again, and I'm not sure what I'm clicking on. Even though it says GitHub, when I'm hovering over it, it might even change. So I don't really like that. Let's jump into the About section. So the About section, we've got this nice big background picture, but the contrast here on the text is a little bit low and the line height is a little bit high, so it's not grouped together. Let's scroll down. We get some examples and photography, more text. Again, I don't feel like reading all this text for some reason. It feels too large maybe. I'm not too sure what it is, but from my perspective here, it's just not working very well. Bits doesn't really tell me what this is. Is this maybe portfolio or case studies? Maybe it's bits of his work. Let's click on one to see what this says on Canvas. Digital Design Days from 2017. We've got something happening here. I can't really tell because there's too much animation. So look, from a general point of view, this is an example of what you shouldn't do. It's adding too much text, adding maybe too much animation, and it's pushing me away from wanting to view this web page more. Having less is often more, like our portfolio from earlier, or the first example of our portfolios where you just show rather than tell. So unfortunately, I'm just going to have to give this one a thumbs down, and let's jump into our next one. Our next design here is from Adella, I think it is, and they've got a bit of a transition here at the start with an introduction. Hi, I'm Adella, designer and developer, and I'm a design-minded front-end developer based in Lagos, Nigeria, and hire me. So I like the fact that hire me is the call to action here, and the other biggest element here is the name. So here's where maybe there needs to be a bit of a change in the priorities of what's important here. Right now we've got the name twice over, and then the next biggest item is the hire me. What I would normally say is probably had this designer and developer being the biggest object here, with often the name being the smallest, because if you're making the name the largest, you're basically saying that you yourself is more important than the fact that you're a developer and a designer, which is the thing that people would probably be coming on here to do to hire you. We've got some nice patterns here on the right hand side, and on top of that we have, when we click on the hire me button, a scroll effect, which is a little bit odd. If I was going to click hire me, I would expect to copy an email address or go to a contact page, but the scroll effect sort of takes me away from what I'm doing, and it actually scrolls me here to on the web. Oh, look who's here. It actually doesn't tell me where the hire me section is. There's no contact form. I assume it's going to this bottom email address, but because of the fact that the scroll doesn't actually happen to the very bottom of this section to keep it in focus, rather it stays at the bottom, I don't actually notice that when I click on the button. The page itself, it's quite short as a portfolio. It's just got this section here for stuff I've worked on, and these have nice colors, nice hover effects, but there is no example of what this looks like, so it's difficult. I suppose because he's working on code, you might not be able to showcase it. It does click through to GitHub or view the page itself. So if we click to view the page, we're taken to what the page actually is. It's a nice looking page, but if we had this preview on this box, that would have been much better. So consider that in the future. Make sure you're showing off your portfolios and your case studies. Then if we keep scrolling through, we've got some links to maybe his work here. But again, if some imagery was used here or some more color for each one of these icons, that would look better. And we also have this menu at the top right. Now, this menu makes me feel like I'm going to go to different projects. But if I click, for example, projects, all it does is it keeps me on the same page and it just scrolls me to the project section. And since this page is already light, it makes me question whether a menu is even required. So I would say that in this case, a menu would not be required because it's just sort of taking me away from, it's sort of visualizing just how small this page is. So there's a few improvements that could definitely be made here. Otherwise, I think that's all I really have. I'm gonna have to unfortunately give this one only a 2.5 stars out of whatever star rating I seem to be doing. But yeah, I definitely think there's room for improvement here at least. Now, if you're a developer and you're looking to improve your design skills, check out Enhance UI. It's a book I'm putting together to essentially help developers learn UI and UX and those fundamentals that'll just make you better at the job that you do. If you have your own portfolio that you want me to maybe look at redesigning as well, submit it in the request review section and I'll have a look at that and maybe do a dedicated video going through the portfolio and giving recommendations like I've done in previous videos. Otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.